Welcome back to another Mech Tech, brought to you by Arcane Fortress, makers of deck boxes, card sleeves, binders, playmats, and more. There is an affiliate link in the description below, which will earn you 5% off your purchase. Now today, we are going over Wolverine Best There Is from the Marvel Secret Lair drop. So Wolverine is a 3-cost Gruul commander. He has it, so he's going to deal double damage. At the beginning of your end step, if he dealt damage to a creature, he is going to get a little bigger in the form of a +1/+1 counter, and for 1 to green, he can be regenerated. So we have a couple different things we're kind of doing with Wolverine, including messing with +1/+1 counter support, having fight spells to ensure that he's dealing damage to creatures, as well as eventually just throwing around big damage for just attacking. Let's get into them, starting with that +1/+1 counter support. Starting off our list is the Defiler of Vigor. So this is a 5-cost 6/6 Trample Boy, which we already like. As an additional cost to cast green spells, we could pay 2 life instead of a green mana for each green mana pip in their cost, which is nice. And whenever we cast a green creature permanent, we get to put a +1/+1 counter on each of our creatures, making our entire board big and beefy. The Dusk Shell Crawler is up next. So Dusk Shell Crawler is a 2-cost 0/3. Whenever they enter, we get to put a +1/+1 counter onto a creature we control, and more importantly, our creatures that have counters on them have trample. Vigor, aka Fog Crawler, to make sure that it was under the $10 limit that we set for our cards. If damage would be dealt to one of our creatures, instead we prevent that damage. Then we go ahead and put +1/+1 counters onto the creature for each piece of damage prevented. Whenever Fog Crawler is put into our grave, it gets shuffled back into our library. Forgotten Ancient. So Forgotten Ancient is a 4-cost 0/3. Anytime anyone casts a spell, it gets +1/+1 counter, and at upkeep we can move those +1/+1 counters around. Halana and Elena Partners. Just roommates, trust me on this. This is a 4-cost 2/3 pair, which have First Strike and Reach. And beginning combat, we get to put X +1/+1 counters onto another creature, where X is their power. Kami of Whispered Hopes gives us a little bit of a Hardened Scales style effect, where we're giving out an extra counter, and they're going to tap for mana equal to their power. Loyal Guardians. This is a 5-cost Trample 4/4. Has Lieutenants, so as long as we have them as well as Wolverine, we're going to get to put a +1/+1 counter on each creature we control at the beginning of combat on our turn. Quilled Great Worm. So this is news from Foundations. It costs 6 mana. They are a 7/7 Trample Worm Boy. Whenever a creature deals combat damage during our turn, we get to put that many +1/+1 counters on it. And we can cast this card from the grave by removing 6 counters from among creatures we control. Vorinclex, aka the Grand Evolution, is up next. So Vorinclex themselves doesn't actually do a lot of +1/+1 counter shenanigans. We do need to transform them, but let's touch on what they do real quick. So they're a 6/6 Trample Reach for 5, which is already good value. Whenever they enter, we get to look for 2 forest cards, put them into our hand, right? Ding out that deck, ramping a little bit in a sense. For 8 mana, we could transform them at sorcery speed to become the Grand Evolution. First step is to mill 2 cards, go ahead and sheep back some creatures. We have enough creatures that we're likely to hit, but even if we don't, we're not all that concerned about it. Second step is to distribute 7 +1/+1 counters, which is huge, and the final step is to make it so that each of our creatures has, for 1 mana, fight a creature. So we're dealing big damage, we're clearing boards, and having a good time doing it. Dropping down into our instance, we have the Archdruid's Charm. So this is 3 green mana. We only get to choose 1 mode, but those modes include searching for a creature or land, revealing it and putting it in our hand, putting a +1/+1 counter onto a creature, and having it deal damage equal to its power to a creature we don't control, or exiling a target artifact or enchantment. Any of those modes are good, but particularly that second mode is kind of why it's in here. Inscription of Abundance. So this is a 2 mana instant. We can kick it for 3 more mana to choose all the modes. But we get to either put 2 +1/+1 counters onto a creature, have a player gain X life, where X is the greatest power among creatures they control, or force a fight. First and last are really what we're here for. Middle one, kind of just a bonus. Adamantium Bonding Tank, aka the Ozolith, is obviously in this deck, and you might be thinking, Mech, no way that's $10. No, it's not, but it was in the secret layer, so if you picked up the secret layer, you have it already. Ozolith, the Shattered Spire. So if one or more +1/+1 counters will be put onto a creature, we get that many +1. For 1 in the green, we could tap it down to put a +1/+1 counter onto a creature at sorcery speed. We could also cycle it away. Probably never doing that, but it's an option. Power Fist. So Power Fist is great. It's a nice 2-cost equipment, 2 to equip, gives the equipped creature trample, and whenever that creature deals combat damage to a player, it gets that many +1/+1 counters on it. Branching Evolution. So this is a 3-cost enchantment. If one or more +1/+1 counters we put onto a creature, we get twice as many instead. Hardened Scales goes ahead and for 1 mana is going to be like, hey, were you going to get a counter? Go ahead and have 2. You've earned it. Rhythm of the Wilds. This is 3-cost. Makes our creature spells uncounterable, which is nice, and gives all of our non-token creatures Riot, meaning they're either going to come in with a +1/+1 counter or haste. Either is good for us. Rite of Passage. So Rite of Passage says, hey, all of your creatures have, whenever they deal damage, go ahead and put a +1/+1 counter on them. Keeping our boys nice and big and beefy. That leads us into just general other power-ups or power modulations, starting with Unnatural Growth, which is going to double the power and toughness of each of our creatures at the start of each combat. Rancor is a single green, passes out +2/+0 trample to whatever creature it enchants, and should be put into the grave from the battlefield. It comes right back to hand, so we can recast it. Hunter's Talent. So Hunter's Talent is from Bloomburrow. It's 1 in the green. Whenever it enters, it does force effectively a bite style effect, where we're going to deal damage based on one of our creatures to another creature on the field, which means Wolverine will have dealt his damage for the turn. At level 2, it does give an attacking creature +1/+0 trample, and if we push it up to level 3, beginning of our end step, as long as we control a creature with at least 4 power, we're drawing cards. Bear Umbra is the last of our enchantment-based power modulation, and that is going to just give out +2/+2, and on attack, let us untap all of our lands. It's also Totem Armor, protecting our board, and specifically protecting Wolverine from any targeted removal. Moving up into equipments, we are running the Reaper Cleaver. So this is a 3-cost equipment, 3 to equip. Gives +1/+1 trample, and whenever they deal damage to a player or planeswalker, we get to create that many treasures. So just a ton of ramp to ensure that we're constantly able to cast as many spells as we want. Some of our spells are a little costly, so it's nice to have. Loxodon Warhammer. Love this as a budget option. 3 to play, 3 to equip. Gives +3/+0 trample, lifelink. Right. You know, we're not quite full Voltron in this deck. I think we have enough creatures to say that we're not. But, you know, we're not super creature heavy. We're not going super, creature wide. So the ability to gain life while we're dealing excess damage is still pretty chef's kiss. Leyline Axe. So this is also new. It's from Foundations, 4 mana. But if you happen to have it in your opening hand, bam, you get to start with it out on the field. Equipped creature is going to get +1/+1 double strike trample. Now, I will say, because we've had a couple cards so far that have trample with Wolverine, you still have to deal lethal damage before it gets doubled with Wolverine in terms of being able to trample over, just based on how the rules work. So it is something to keep in mind, but double strike trample is always a win, and the +1/+1 is icing on that cake. Up next in our power modulation is Xenagos, God of Rebels. So this is a 5-cost indestructible 6/5 enchantment creature god. At the start of combat, they're going to double the power and toughness of a creature we control. And, you know, it's going to be Wolverine, and he's going to deal big damage, especially while he's trampling over everybody. Guardian Augmenter is next. This is a 3-cost 2/2 flashable creature. Commander creatures we control have +2/+2 as well as hexproof. Really just kind of giving a little bit of power and a little bit of extra protection to our boy to ensure that we aren't getting, kind of fucked over here. With all that being said, though, it is time to fight for your right to kill your opponents. So we're going to start off with Domri, Anarch of Bolas. So this is a 3 loyalty, 3-cost planeswalker that's going to give all of our creatures +1/+0. Good segue there, Mac. We crushed it. For +1, we get to add either red or green, and we get to cast a creature with it, which would be uncounterable. So we had seen that a little bit earlier, but here's another instance of it, right? We really need our creatures to kind of hit the field to deal big damage. And for -2, we get to force a fight. Dropping down to the Uvenwald Tracker, this is a 1/1 for 1. For 1 in the green, you can tap them and force a fight. Jumping down into our sorceries, we have Bridgeworks Battle. So Bridgeworks Battle, right? This is a 3-cost sorcery that's going to go ahead and give a creature +2/+2 for the turn and let it fight another creature we don't control. If you need to, you could play it as a land. Play it as the Tanglespan Bridgeworks. You could go ahead and pay 3 life to have it come in untapped, but generally speaking, right, it's here to be a fight spell. In a kind of similar vein, honestly, we have Bushwhack. So Bushwhack is single green. We could either go ahead and find a basic land to hand, or we could have a creature we control fight a creature we don't. Contest of Claws. So nice little Ixalan card here. Target creature we control deals damage to a creature that we don't. Any excess damage dealt allows us to discover for that value. Following that up, we have Smell Fear. So Smell Fear is great. It's going to let us proliferate and then fight. And since we're doing a lot of +1/+1 counter shenanigans and fighting, Smell Fear is an obvious addition to this deck. Stomp is another one of those lands that is a land on one side and a fight spell on the other. So target creature we control deals damage equal to its power to a creature or planeswalker we don't control, which means we don't even have to worry about Wolverine taking damage, and we're probably removing a nice target for ourselves. Colony Ambush follows that up. This is a 3-cost spell that's going to let a creature we control fight a creature we don't at instant speed, and on the back is a land. Prize Fight. So Prize Fight has us, again, choose a creature we control to fight, a creature we don't control, but has the added benefit of giving us a treasure back as a little bonus. Dropping down into our enchantments, we have Gimli's Reckless Might. So this is a 4-cost enchantment that gives all of our creatures haste, which we already love. Whenever we attack with a creature, if the total power is 8 or greater among all of our creatures, we get to force a fight. So we have about 3 or so ways of repeatedly forcing fights, as well as a number of other fight spells just natively in the deck. And the last thing I really want to go over is just some like big finishers for us. So we're going to actually start off with an equipment Mage Slayer. So Mage Slayer is super cheap to pick up. Under $1, 3 to play, 3 to equip. Whenever the equipped creature attacks, it deals damage equal to its power to a player or planeswalker that it's attacking. So, huge damage, right? Because Wolverine's going to double that. Chandra's Ignition follows that up. So this is a 5-cost sorcery. Target creature we control is going to deal damage equal to its power to each other creature and each other player. So, big damage all around. We're here for it. And the last of our, hey, have some extra damage on top is Ketis Emberclaw Familiar. This is a 1/1 for 2. Whenever a commander we control deals damage to an opponent, it deals that much to each other opponent. So using that in combination with the Chandra's Ignition is basically like saying, oh man, did you just deal damage to each of your opponents? Effectively triple it? And like, I have to look into the ruling in terms of like how the doubling effect works, but it seems strong, right? But guys, that is the deck tech overall. There are some cards I didn't go over, mainly like the ramp package and whatnot, but it's about what you would expect for a budget build. But remember to check out Arcane Fortress. There is a link in the description below, as I said earlier. The link helps you by saving you money. They are also doing a Black Friday sale this weekend, so make sure you check them out. But I'm Mechanized Minion, the Energy King, wishing you good luck with your builds, and if you felt like you got some value out of this deck tech, or any of my deck techs really, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, just watch the videos. It's really the best thing you could do to support the channel and help us grow.